Good morning. Welcome back to our stories. And where we left off last time, Orpheus was actually in a pretty happy spot. After losing his beloved, he went down to Hades and got her and then lost her again. And then in his sadness, he grieved himself back down into Hades where he met up with her. And maybe they're still there happily ever after. Today's story is about the mortal descendants of Zeus, Europa, and Cadmus. The Muses joyously sang about lovely Europa, chosen by Zeus to be the first queen of Crete. Her father, King Agenor of Tyre, was a descendant of Io, the girl who had fled to Egypt in the shape of a white cow. Zeus had been looking far and wide for a maiden worthy of being the queen of Crete, the island where he had been raised. One day, his eyes fell on Europa, and her beauty quite captured his heart. Changing himself into a snow-white bull, he trotted about in the meadow by the sea where Europa was playing with her maidens. Now at first, she was afraid of this strange bull who suddenly stood beside her, but as he looked at her with big, soft eyes, she lost her fear. She tied a wreath of flowers around his broad neck and gently patted his glistening sides. The bull knelt down at her feet, and trustingly she climbed up on his back and asked him to take her for a ride. He walked up and down the beach with her, and Europa laughed and clapped her hands and called to her maidens to come and see the marvelous bull that she had found. But suddenly the bull turned and rushed away over the sea with her. Her maidens cried out in terror, and the king came running out of his palace, just in time to see the bull and his daughters disappear beyond the horizon. Trembling, Europa clung to the horns of the bull, but to her surprise not a drop of water touched her toes, for Nereids, swimming all about, smoothed the waves with their hands, and they made the sea a polished road for the bull to run on. And then the bull turned his head and spoke. He was not a bull, he said, but Zeus himself, and he had come to earth to make her his bride, and the queen of Crete. When Zeus arrived in Crete with Europa, he put a royal crown of jewels on her head as a token of his love. And she lived in Crete in glory and delight to the end of her days. She had 3 sons, Minos and Sarpedon, who became great kings, and Rhadamanthus, who was so wise that after his death he was made a judge in the underworld. When Zeus returned to Olympus, he ordered his son Hephaestus the smith to make a bronze robot that would watch over Crete and Europa. 3 times a day, Talos, the robot, walked with clanking steps around the shores of the island, and whenever an enemy ship approached, he hurled rocks at it and sank it. The king of Tyre had sent his 3 sons to search for their kidnapped sister. 2 of the brothers soon gave up, but Cadmus, the 3rd brother, sailed on to Greece with his men. There he went to the oracle at Delphi and asked where Europa could be found. His sister was well and happy, he was told, and he must give up the search for her. Instead, he should stay in Greece and found a new kingdom. A snow-white cow would lead him to a good site for a walled city. Cadmus left Delphi, and indeed before long he met a white cow. He followed her uphill and downhill, over mountains and through valleys, and at last the cow lay on top of a knoll in the middle of a wide plain. Cadmus saw with pleasure that it was perfect as a site for a walled city. He sent one of his men for water from a nearby bubbling spring. The man did not return. Cadmus sent another man to go look for him. Well, he did not return either. And then another, and another. Cadmus sent all of his men, but not one of them came back. At last he went himself to see what had happened, and he found a dragon guarding the spring. The monster had devoured all of his men, but now it was so sluggish and so sleepy that Cadmus easily slayed it. But that did not bring his men back to life, and Cadmus could not build a walled city all alone. He sacrificed the white cow to the gods and begged them for help. Athena answered his plea. "Plow a field," she told him. "Pull out the dragon's teeth and sow them in the furrows." The advice sounded strange, but Cadmus did as he was told. As soon as the dragon's teeth were sown, up shot a host of fierce warriors. They rushed at Cadmus, waving their swords, and the terror-struck hero gave himself up for lost. But again, Athena called to him, "Throw a rock among them." He did. And at once the warriors flew at one another, each accusing his neighbor of having thrown the rock. They fought furiously till only 5 were left, and they were badly wounded. Cadmus nursed them back to health, and they became his faithful men and helped him to build Thebes, the great walled city with 7 gates. Cadmus became a great king, and the gods favored him. Zeus gave him Harmonia, a daughter of Aphrodite, for his queen. The gods gave the bride a magic necklace to keep her beautiful and young. And Thebes, ruled by Cadmus and his descendants, became one of the greatest Greek cities.